Hello everyone, I am here with a true story from Where Miracles Happen, True Stories of Heavenly Encounters. Okay, this one is called The Apple of His Eye, and it has a Bible verse before the story, 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 19, 20, and 21. Do not pull out the Spirit's fire. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. Test everything. Hold on to the good. The Apple of His Eye. Antha Dishman, better known as Sister Sally, began preaching while she was still a teenager. Her work has taken her to many towns all over the South, and where Sally goes, miracles often happen. This is not a coincidence. Sally says because she is willing to obey God's voice when she believes that she is hearing it, no matter what onlookers might think of her. And many miracles require a step taken in faith before anything happens. Currently, Sally pastors a small Bible church named Jesus' Lighthouse in Monticello, Kentucky. Before this, she worked at the House of Prayer in Hudsonville, Kentucky. While at the House of Prayer on Saturday in August, Sister Sally heard the Lord asking her to take a red delicious apple to church the next morning. To many people, this might have seemed odd, but Sally was used to his voice, and she took the request very seriously. That Sunday, on the way to church, Sally asked her husband Arnold to stop at the store. Her reason did not sit too well with him. He's the type who worries about what people think. Sally admits that she's the type who wonders what God will think. But Arnold, although grumbling, pulled over, and Sally went in and bought an entire bag of delicious apples. She chose the very best one. "What's the apple for?" asked the first person she met at the House of Prayer, who happened to be the owner of the building. "I'm not really sure," Sally hesitated. This man's wife had recently died, and since then he'd been extremely difficult to talk to. She dreaded upsetting him because he might just decide not to rent to her anymore. Inspiration struck. "We Christians are considered the apples of God's eyes," she pointed out. The man nodded and walked away. Sally decided to preach a sermon on that theme. She would use the apple in the pulpit as a visual aid. The sermon went very well. Worship over, Sally collected her things. "I went to pick up the apple, and I distinctively heard God say to leave it on the pulpit." Sally did not want to do this. She hadn't been pastor very long, and she didn't want to make waves. Not only that, but the building owner always turned off the air conditioning after meetings. That apple would rot in the 90-degree weather during the following week. But how could she say no to God? Reluctantly, Sally went to the owner and explained the Lord's command. "What?" he asked, astonished. "My wife and I built that pulpit. The wood is very high grade. I don't want stains on it." "I'm not about to disobey God," Sally explained. "If you want to throw the apple out, do it, but I'm going to leave it there." The owner sighed. Already he knew that Sally's strength was formidable. "Leave it there," he retorted. During the week, the heat intensified. By Tuesday, one of the apples in the bag Sally purchased was already rotten. Sally was worried the apple in the church would smell terrible for Wednesday night prayer meeting, and people would be uncomfortable. Further, what was the point of it all? Shortly before the prayer service, Sally came into church prepared for the worst. The air conditioning hadn't yet been turned on, but there was no rotting smell. Sally went up to the pulpit and looked. The apple was still there, looking just as fresh and pretty as it had on Sunday, and there was no stains or leaks on the pulpit. Sally gave a direct sermon, not mentioning the apple, and felt so relieved. She had obeyed the Lord. No one had asked about or noticed the apple, and now she could surely toss it away. But when she gathered her things and picked up the apple, God spoke, "Leave it there." "Not again, Lord," Sally prayed silently. "You know how the owner feels about this building and us church people." "Who are you serving?" the Lord asked. "Him or me?" It was no contest. Sally put the apple back and went to inform the owner. "I hope you know what you're doing," he told her gruffly. "An apple sitting on the pulpit is crazy." Sally had no idea what she was doing, but when she returned to the hot interior of the church building for services the following Sunday, the apple was still there, still fresh. Sally thanked God again, and this time she barely glanced at the owner. The owner approached her. "Where is it?" he demanded. "On the pulpit," Sally said. "This is ridiculous," the owner said. "I'm going to throw it away." "Go ahead," Sally told him. By now she knew that something important was happening, and the owner must have known too, for when she returned to church the following Wednesday, the apple, still perfect, was still there. This went on for 21 days, Sally says. The apple became a part of our church. Before sitting in a pew or shaking hands with anyone, people would go up to the pulpit, pick it up, and inspect it. But God had told Sally something else as well. When the 21 days were up, He would show me what to do with the apple. One day, 21, there was a new visitor to the little congregation, an 18-year-old girl with lupus. The doctors had given up hope for her, and this was the first time she had ever been in a church. Sally didn't know her, but as people came up for a prayer blessing, the girl got in line, and Sally heard God's command. She was to give the girl the apple to eat. Sally will never forget the looks on the people's faces as she obediently reached across the pulpit to get the apple. "No, not the apple," more than one called out. They had grown used to the phenomenon and didn't want to lose it. The young woman, not privy to the previous happenings, obligingly bit into the apple. Sally noticed that it was still firm and juicy. Everyone watched as their visitor ate the entire piece of fruit and threw the core into the wastebasket. Sally looked closely at her. Was it her imagination, or did the girl look just a bit healthier? She looked over at where the owner had been sitting. He was now lying on the floor with his eyes closed, which is often called resting in the spirit, a beautiful spiritual experience which sometimes brings healing in the body or mind. He remained on the floor for several hours as the prayer service continued around him. A few days later, the girl's physician noticed that she seemed to be improving rapidly. Today she is married and the mother of 2. There has never been a sign of lupus since that evening at church. The doctors still don't know what happened, but those in that little country church know about the miracle God performed with the apple, through Sally's obedience. That's the important thing, she says. If God asks you to take an apple to church, do it. Amazing things can happen when we say yes.